In the long and winding story of gardening, many wonderful plants have faded from view. Like old friends we have not seen in years, some crops simply fall out of favor. Sometimes a new and more productive vegetable comes along, pushing the older varieties aside. Think of how many different types of apples existed a century ago compared to the few we see in supermarkets today. Fashions change, not just in our clothes, but in our gardens and on our plates. We lose something precious when this happens. We lose diversity, we lose resilience, and we lose a tangible connection to the gardeners and cooks who came before us. But thankfully, some of these forgotten treasures are being rediscovered, holding lessons for us all. The past is a deep well of knowledge for any gardener. Our ancestors knew a thing or two about growing food in difficult conditions, without the modern chemicals and conveniences we often rely upon. They cultivated plants that were tough, reliable, and full of flavor. These weren't just for sustenance, they were a part of the culture. The disappearance of these crops is often a tale of industrial agriculture, where uniformity and shelf life became more important than taste or adaptability. It is a real shame, as we have narrowed our food choices so dramatically. Rediscovering these heirloom vegetables is more than just a novelty. It is an act of preservation and a step towards a more sustainable way of growing. Fortunately, there is a growing movement of gardeners who are looking back to these old ways. They are seeking out the lost and the unusual, bringing forgotten flavors back to the dinner table. This is where a wonderful plant like skirret comes into the picture. It is a vegetable that was once prized in medieval and Tudor gardens, a staple on the tables of both common folk and royalty. For centuries, it was a reliable source of sweetness and nutrition, long before sugar was widely available. Its story is a perfect example of a crop that was pushed aside, not because it was inferior, but because other crops, like the potato, were easier to process on a massive scale. Bringing back a crop like skirret is a wonderfully rewarding experience. It connects us to a different time, to a rhythm of gardening that is slower and more in tune with the seasons. It teaches us that the latest and greatest is not always the best. Sometimes the old wisdom holds the key to a more resilient and flavorful garden. As we face new challenges in our climate and look for more sustainable ways to feed ourselves, these heritage vegetables offer a path forward. They remind us that the answers we seek are often buried just beneath the surface, waiting patiently in the soil for us to find them again. So, what exactly is this forgotten marvel? Skirret, or Siam cicerum, is a perennial root vegetable that belongs to the carrot family. Imagine a bundle of slender white roots, all joined together at the top, a bit like a cluster of thin parsnips or pale, skinny carrots. It was a hugely important crop in Europe from Roman times right through to the 18th century. It was loved for its distinctively sweet flavor, which made it a popular ingredient in all sorts of dishes, from sweet puddings to savory stews. Before the widespread cultivation of sugarcane, skirret was one of the primary sources of sweetness in the kitchen, making it a true luxury of its time. What makes skirret so special, especially for the modern gardener, is its incredible toughness. This is not a fussy plant. While many of our modern vegetables demand perfect soil and constant attention, skirret is far more forgiving. It will happily grow in quite poor damp soil, a corner of the garden where other plants might struggle. It is also exceptionally hardy. The plant can withstand deep winter freezes without any trouble at all, which makes it a very reliable crop in our often unpredictable British climate. Its leaves die back in the autumn, but the roots remain perfectly safe and sound underground, ready for you to harvest throughout the coldest months. Compared to the potato, which has become the undisputed king of root vegetables, skirret has some clear advantages for the home grower. Potatoes can be quite prone to blight and other diseases, which can wipe out an entire crop in a matter of weeks. They also suffer from pests like slugs and wireworms. Skirret, on the other hand, seems to be remarkably pest and disease resistant. Slugs tend to leave it alone, and it is not troubled by the many ailments that can plague other root crops. This means you can grow it with very little intervention, making it a perfect choice for organic or low-maintenance gardening. Its perennial nature is another huge bonus. Once you have established a patch of skirret, it will keep producing for you year after year. You can harvest some of the roots while leaving the main crown in the ground to grow again the following spring. This is true sustainable gardening in action. You plant it once, and with minimal care, it provides you with food for years to come. It is a plant that works with you, not against you. This reliability is something medieval gardeners would have cherished, and it is a quality we should value just as much today as we look for dependable food sources. Getting started with skirret in your own garden is wonderfully straightforward. The best way to begin is by planting offsets, which are small sections of root from an established plant, or by growing it from seed. If you are using seeds, it is best to sow them in early spring, either directly into the ground or in pots to transplant later. The seeds can be a little slow to germinate, so patience is key. Simply sow them thinly in a prepared seed bed, cover them lightly with soil, and keep them moist. Once the seedlings are large enough to handle, you can thin them out or move them to their final growing position. When it comes to soil, skirret is not particularly demanding, but it does have its preferences. It performs best in a moisture-retentive, humus-rich soil. If you have a spot in your garden that tends to stay a bit damp, that would be ideal. Before planting, it is a good idea to dig in plenty of well-rotted organic matter, such as garden compost or leaf mold. This will help the soil hold moisture and provide the nutrients the plant needs to develop its lovely, sweet roots. A sunny or partially shaded position will suit it just fine. Once planted, give it a good watering to help it settle in. Caring for skirret is incredibly simple. The main thing is to ensure the plants do not dry out, especially during long, hot spells in summer. A good mulch of compost or straw around the base of the plants will help to conserve moisture in the soil and keep the weeds down. Skirret does not require much feeding. The initial addition of organic matter at planting time is usually enough to see it through the season. As an herbaceous perennial, the foliage will grow up to about 1 meter tall during the summer before dying back naturally as autumn arrives. You can simply cut the dead stems back to ground level in late autumn. Harvesting is the most rewarding part. The roots are best after they have experienced a frost or two, as the cold weather helps to convert their starches into sugars, making them even sweeter. You can start harvesting from late autumn and continue right through the winter. Simply use a garden fork to carefully lift the entire clump of roots from the ground. You can then select the thickest, most tender-looking roots for the kitchen. To ensure a crop for next year, you can replant the central crown with a few small roots still attached. It will regrow and provide you with another harvest the following winter. But the flavour of skirret is what truly sets it apart and makes it such a worthwhile crop to grow. It is often described as a cross between a parsnip and a carrot, but with a unique sweetness and a delicate, almost nutty undertone. Some people also detect a hint of pepper, which adds a lovely complexity. The texture, when cooked, is soft and tender. Unlike some root vegetables that can become woody, skirret remains beautifully smooth. Modern chefs who have rediscovered this medieval delight often refer to it as a lost delicacy. It offers a taste profile that is both familiar and excitingly different, bringing a touch of history to any meal. In the kitchen, skirret is very versatile. Historically, it was often used in sweet preparations like skirret pies, which were a type of sweet tart sweetened with the root itself. You can certainly use it in this way, perhaps grating it into cakes or puddings. However, it is just as wonderful in savoury dishes. One of the best ways to enjoy it is simply roasted. Toss the roots in a little oil, season with salt and pepper, and roast them until they are tender and slightly caramelized. This method really brings out their natural sweetness. They can also be boiled and mashed, perhaps with a bit of butter and nutmeg, or added to hearty winter soups and stews. Preparing skirret is easy, but there is one small thing to be aware of. The roots have a slightly tough, woody core running through the center. This core remains hard even after cooking, so it is best to remove it. The simplest way to do this is to cook the roots whole first, by either boiling or steaming them. Once they are tender, the core can be easily pulled out. Alternatively, for larger roots, you can slice them lengthwise and cut the core out before cooking. It is a small extra step, but it is well worth the effort to enjoy the wonderfully tender flesh of this exceptional vegetable. Ultimately, the comeback of skirret is about more than just finding a new vegetable to grow. It represents a shift towards a more thoughtful and sustainable approach to gardening. In a world where we are encouraged to seek out easy, healthy and resilient food sources, skirret ticks all the boxes. It is easy to grow, resistant to problems, and provides delicious, nutritious food during the leanest months of the year. By planting skirret, you are not just cultivating a crop, you are reviving a piece of our horticultural heritage and embracing a future where our gardens are more diverse, productive, and full of flavor. I encourage you to give it a try.